There are conversations that I have wanted to have and then talk myself out of. And this episode was one of them. Kelly Myers is a divorce and co-parenting coach who has been on this show twice before. And she reached out not long ago and asked if we could talk about something she's never shared publicly before. That's what she wishes she had done differently in her own co-parenting relationship and what it cost her family that she did not. Kelly lost her son Jack in 2024. And in the year that followed, she looked back with a clarity that only that kind of loss can bring. And she's sharing it today with you all because she hopes you will not have to learn it the way that she did. Stay with us. Welcome to Divorce and Beyond, a podcast about navigating divorce and what comes next. I'm Susan Guthrie. I'm a divorce attorney and mediator, and for more than 3 decades, I've helped people navigate divorce with clarity, strategy, and compassion. Each episode offers practical insight into the legal, emotional, and life decisions that shape your future. So let's get started. Hello, listeners. You know, I've been a divorce attorney and mediator for 35 years, and in all that time, I've had a lot of hard conversations. That's really part of the job. But I can tell you that getting ready for today's podcast episode taping was a little different because I knew this was going to be a hard conversation because I knew that it was going to be hard for my friend who is coming on to share her journey in the hopes that it's going to help you. My guest today is Kelly Myers. Kelly has been on twice before, and she is a divorce and co-parenting coach, a mediator, and a communication specialist. She's the founder of First Steps Divorce and the co-trainer for the Co-Parenting Specialist Training Program. She's someone I have known for years and who I do value as a friend. The first time Kelly was on, we talked about what to expect on divorce day one. You know, when those papers are signed and the reality of everything that comes next lands on you all at once. And then the second time she came on, we talked about the divorce hangover, the fog of exhaustion and conflict that follows too many people into what should be their fresh start. And both times, Kelly came to the table as the expert that she is. Today, she's coming back as something more than an expert. In June of 2024, Kelly lost her son Jack at the age of 23. And in the time since, she has done something that I believe takes real courage. She has looked back at the years of high-conflict co-parenting that shaped her children's childhoods and asked herself the hardest question a parent can ask. What did I contribute? And what would I do differently? And then she called me and she asked to have this conversation here with this community. And I'll be honest, my first instinct was to say no, not because the story does not deserve to be told, but I was not sure I could hold the space properly for it. But Kelly wants to tell you what has happened for her family, and I'm glad I said yes. What Kelly shares today is a gift to every person who is still in the middle of the conflict, still holding that tug-of-war rope, still believing that if they just fight harder or smarter or longer, things will get better for their kids. This episode is the view from the other side, and I think it is exactly what someone listening today needs to hear. Kelly, my friend, thank you. Thank you for trusting me, and thank you for trusting this community with something so personal. I am honored that you are here. Kelly, I'm so honored that you are back with us today and that you're sharing your personal journey with listeners for this special episode. So thank you from me and from them.
Well, thank you for having me. This is an important discussion, and I am so grateful to have it with you.
Well, it feels like, I have to say you reached out to me about having this conversation, and my first response was, "Oh no, we can't talk about this." I'll be upset for you. I'm not going to be able to talk about this. And it's not about me. I'm not in any way wanting to say that, but your ability to share your experience, your lessons. You and I have talked about this, and you very generously share both maybe some of the steps in the right direction you took, but I think you also share some missteps you might have made. What I do know about this conversation is that it's going to help the people who are out there who are listening. It is not your usual journey through divorce, lessons I learned type of episode. There's a lot more here. And well, let's get into it. Let's share, give people, I always call it setting the table. Tell people, let's take us back to your divorce.
I was married in 2000 and got divorced. I think I asked for a divorce, and that could be a whole nother conversation how poorly I did that. But I asked for a divorce. I believe it was in December of 2011. I think my husband was surprised and hurt. We had three young boys at that point, 6, 8, and 10. We didn't handle that conversation well, I will say that, when we shared with them what was going on. And we ended up mediating. Our divorce was finalized in 2012. There was a lot of conflict, during the divorce process itself. I made really poor decisions. I didn't have an attorney. I didn't have a CDFA. I didn't have all that team to support me. I think the conflict really ramped up when we were co-parenting. In fact, there was a point at which we went back to court. I fought for a child support issue, which then turned into almost a 2-year custody battle.
Ugh.
So
So that was
um,
post-divorce.
that was post
Things
divorce.
ramped up
Yeah.
post-divorce. Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really ramped up post divorce. And that had a tremendous impact, not only on my boys, but quite frankly on me too, and the whole family. Right. And I have a very close family, and it was the center of conversation a lot.
At every family party, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about what's going on with Kelly and the kids.
Yeah. And I took over friendship conversations, just everything. It was the center of my life for a very long time.
What do you think? It's interesting because I just did an episode not long ago with Gabrielle Hartley about why parenting plans fall apart and
Mhm.
why very often, because they aren't crafted to be durable, to be to reestablish or start new parenting or co-parenting paradigms, it's not until the divorce is final and then people think they're just going to settle into their beyond and live their life,
Yeah.
yet that's when the conflict takes on a new level.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could probably have another hour on parenting plans. I will tell you that there wasn't much of a plan in my parenting plan other than the basics, right? What's your schedule going to look like? How are you going to handle holidays? Who's going to pick up, who's going to drop off, those types of things. It really never dealt with the day-to-day details, those details that we all have to live in every day.
Yeah.
None of that was addressed. I do think that when you're going through divorce, and if you're working with somebody who understands the value of a parenting plan, hopefully what they're going to do is help you really look at those day-to-day details. And more important than getting into a binding agreement or your MSA or all of that, more importantly, taking this probably one and only time you're going to sit down and talk about parenting and talk about where do you align, where do you not align, and I always say it's where you don't align, where you have to spend more time, even if it's just to have an understanding of what you're walking into, right, rather than an
Yeah.
expectation that it's all going to be good now that you're not living together, now that you don't have to deal with each other, it's all going to be great, and it
But
isn't.
guess what?
Yeah.
You still have to deal with each other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that, you're what you're saying is something that we see over and over again because, as you said, it was a perfectly standard parenting plan,
Yeah.
which is for many people like, hey, we've covered the basics. We're exhausted by all of this. We just want to be done. We'll figure out the rest of it later.
Right.
And then real life sets in, right, as you said. And then on top of that, you had one of your children who was struggling, who always had maybe struggled, but
Yeah.
that may have had something to do with the escalation in co-parenting conflict?
Certainly. So, my beautiful little boy Jack, not so little, ended up being 6'2" and 200 and some pounds. He died on June 2nd of 2024, and sadly, it was a drug overdose. He had struggled mightily from the time he was little. I mean, we had professionals involved, I think, starting when he was like 3 or 4.
Oh, goodness.
So he had a lot of struggles. And certainly those struggles, had an impact on co-parenting, right? I mean, it's hard enough to parent a child that has a lot of difficulties when you've got two parents living in one home, much less when you've got two parents living in two different homes who don't talk, who don't come together, and whose engagement that the kids experience is all about conflict. Well, and then when you look at Jack's issues, behavioral issues, I think those things escalated with the uncertainty, right? With having to have this noise around him all the time from his parents. And I would imagine too, there was a lot of him feeling like maybe he's to blame for things when all he's hearing is dad and I arguing, about him and what we need to do with him and all the things. And so I would imagine that had something to do with maybe some of his behavioral escalation at times. Jack's passing, there's a lot to process with that, which is for the reasons why I reached out.
Yeah, well, and, I think that the passing of your son
Mhm.
is something that, I honestly can't imagine what you have gone through and what the journey or the experience has been like, but it has given you a space for reflection as well.
It absolutely has. If I can take a moment and just share a little bit about Jack, because
I
I
would
before we get into, some of the other things, I'd like to share the joy of Jack.
absolutely.
As I mentioned, he was 23 when he passed. Jack, I mean, I love all of my boys, but I have to say Jack has a special place in my heart because he made me a mom. Jack, from the time he was little, I mean, I remember he would sit at the table before he could even talk and would be having these conversations with his hands. I mean, he was hilarious. He had this unmatched sense of humor and witticism that was, I mean, again, from the time he was little, that just seemed so much bigger than his little body. He had a smile that could light up a room. When that kid gave me a hug or told me he loved me, you could just feel it. So it's a great loss, not only to me and our family, but truly to the world at large. That human, that spirit is no longer here. And it's truly sad that I'm never going to see him or hear his laugh or get to see him have children or walk down the aisle or all the things, that a parent that kind of your wins, right? We go through
Yeah.
all those hard years and then you get to
Yes, I well
have that.
know.
Yeah, there's a loss, there's a hole in my heart, and there's a hole in our family. But his passing did make me reflect on several things. I think initially when he passed, what I have to say is at that point, his dad, Blake, and I had gotten to a much better place. I think we got to a place where we found the ability to respect each other and what we had to offer the boys individually. And I actually think that we came to a place where we were friends, where I could truly say, to people, like, I love him. He gave me these three boys and I care deeply for him. And what I was so grateful about, initially when Jack passed was the fact that when he passed, we could come together. to honor him and to support our other boys. They were going through a lot. My middle son sadly was the one that found Jack, so you can imagine the trauma there. And so it required both of us to come together and support them, to support each other, because at the end of the day, we were the only two there when Jack came into the room, right? Or came into this world. We're the only ones that have certain memories of him when he was little. And so we were able to come together and support each other, stand up together, at a service and afterwards. And it was really lovely. I think I even shared with you, I reflected back on, instead of Blake calling me and telling me the news, it was an average Sunday. I remember I was hanging pictures up. I mean, I remember that it's like a movie scene,
I would
that took place
imagine you
there.
will always remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't call me and tell me. He called my husband and told him. And so I remember Jim coming in and sitting down and saying, "You need to sit down." And I'm thinking, "Okay, I'm taking pictures. What do I need to sit
Yeah.
down?" And, he shared it with me. And I will eternally be grateful to Blake that that's how he chose to tell me, was to have somebody there with me and somebody that he knows loves me. And that was wonderful. So there were a lot of really great things to reflect on. And in that time, I really reflected on the changes that I made probably 5, 6 years ago, maybe a little bit longer now, in terms of how I showed up in the co-parenting relationship. That I was no longer going to engage in this tit for tat. I needed to find a different gear. And certainly part of that, uh, as you know, Christina and I do the co-parenting specialist training. And so I had really had the lovely opportunity to learn from one of the best on that subject, and how to show up differently as a co-parent, and how important it was to kids to do that. And so, initially I reflected on that. And if I'm honest, there was a little bit of a pat myself on the back that, wow, you made a change. You did what you've told other parents to do. And thankfully, Blake made changes too. And we got to this really nice place. And then about a year passed. And that's when the reflection went a little deeper. And that's when I had to deal with some really hard truths. I didn't show up for Jack or my boys in a way that I'm proud. And that I desperately wish that I had a chance to do it over again. And I can't. I don't even have the ability to tell Jack that I'm sorry and that I wish I had done it differently. So what I did think about was, I may not be able to do anything for Jack, but hopefully if I talk about it, I can help other people, other parents, avoid the very deep-seated regret that I have over my part in contributing to the conflict when my kids were young. And so that was kind of then the impetus for reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, hey, you want to talk about this?"
Well, and this is an emotional journey, right? That you have been on, and many people would be able. Of course, it's emotional. This is a very traumatic and sad thing to be happening in your life, and the loss of your son, especially as I hear his laugh when you talk about it. I see him hugging you when you talk about that. It makes me feel your loss very deeply for you. And people are, thinking, well, of course it's a time where you'd feel sad. But what I think many people are not going to see if they're in the midst of the conflict. Right. And that's who I'm speaking to right now. I know it's who you're speaking to as well, right? The parents who are in the midst of the conflict, who think, yeah, but, right? Yes, but that's her, that's them. They could do that. They're not dealing with what I'm dealing with. And yes, you were.
There's no question. If you asked anybody, in fact, if you asked Blake, he would probably say there's no way we'd be where we are today. I think any professional that I worked with during that 2-year, custody battle, any friend that you talked to, my family, my husband,
Yeah.
would have said there is no way in hell that they will ever get to a better place. No way. But we did.
And you did.
We did.
And it wasn't, I think it's important to make clear, it wasn't your joint loss that brought you together.
Correct. It
This
wasn't.
happened before that. This
Yes.
was a part of, well, we're gonna talk about, I think,
Mhm.
I think it's important to talk about what changed, what
Mhm.
changes you made that could do this, but I want people to really understand
Mhm.
that this was a not an overnight thing.
No.
This was not done with you changing your son's father,
Nope.
having that, one come to Jesus moment with him where he saw the light and made changes. This started with you.
It did. I think that it started with just I was worn out.
Yeah.
I was just
It's
tired of it.
exhausting.
Exhausting, I mean, every conversation, everything was centered around a conflict, what their dad did, what he said. I mean, I look back and I just think, what a boring human being I was at that point. But yeah, I decided for me that I was worn out. I didn't want to do it anymore. And also, I knew it wasn't good for my kids. And so yeah, it was me deciding I was going to drop the road. I wasn't going to play this verbal tug of war anymore. And that created change slowly created change. But I had to stay committed to not picking up that road.
Right.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of people get stuck on is, well, I've done all these things, right? And they're not responding in kind, or, it's good for a while and then they do something and you're like, well, th- they're exactly who I thought they were. Right. And I had to realize that this has how I choose to show up for my kids, for myself, for my husband in my life has nothing to do with what Blake does. And so he may have done something that would have been triggering. And instead, I had to really sit and think, what am I going to do here that is aligned with who I want to be? And I'm not saying it's easy,
Oh, God,
but
no.
that was the decision I had to make. And what I want to impress upon everybody is even in the beginning when it was hard and I wasn't getting the responses I wanted from Blake, or who wasn't reacting in kind all the time, I still had more peace
Yeah.
because I knew I responded or I did things in a way that I was more proud of. I was not to say I didn't make mistakes. In fact, I can tell you it's the funniest thing. There were times when let's say Blake would send me a text, it would just send me. And I would and Jim, my husband, would say, that's not gonna go well. That's not gonna go well. And I would say, I don't care. I'm so mad I'm doing it anyway. And what happened? Exactly what both Jim and I knew would happen, but I was too
It didn't
angry.
go well.
It didn't go well
It didn't go
every
well.
single time. So yeah, what I find is yes, it was important for me to make that change for my kids, but just as important to make it for me.
Well, I think that's a key factor. You and I were talking a moment ago as we were, getting ready to start taping this. And I don't think there's a listener out there who has not heard some professional, some family member, someone out there say, just do it for the kids, right? You
Mm,
got to do it for the kids. And none of us will disagree with that.
right.
But that's what we as professionals have been saying. I've been at it for 35 years, and that's been my mantra all along. It's hard to do it for the kids. It's hard to make those decisions every single day. The difference that you see
Mhm,
will often, this is what I've heard from so many people who drop the rope. I like that phrase. The difference that people see often is not in the kids right away.
mhm.
It is in their own peace. And then they start to see how that piece multiplies for the kids. But it's more of a domino that way than it affecting, because the kids are still living in the chaos of perhaps one conflictual household
Yeah.
where the other, parent is still
Mhm.
reacting the same way. So I think that's really important for people to understand is that, because it's going to sound a little selfish maybe,
Mhm.
right? To do it for yourself and not to do it for the kids or not have that be the sole focus. Of course you're doing it for your kids.
Yes, but what do they say when we get on an airline, right? If the masks come down, who gets it first? Well, we're not able to take care of our kids and be there for our kids. I wasn't able to be the best mom I could be, my best self, if I wasn't also taking care of me. And what I realized is that all of this conflict, all of my engaging, all of my poking was essentially stealing my peace.
Yep.
It was stealing my peace. I couldn't blame that on their dad. I was allowing it to happen and engaging in it. And I think when I made that connection was when it was much easier to drop that rope or not pick it up because I realized, first and foremost, I'm doing this for me so that I can be the mom my kids need me to be for them.
Right. You can show up as a different parent, right? Think
Yeah,
about the two different parents in this paradigm. And I'm not talking about Blake. I'm talking about you. I'm
right.
talking about conflict stressed Kelly or drop the rope. He's going to do what he's going to do, but I'm going to be in my own space and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And that's what I'm going to concern myself with.
Exactly. And, I think we talked about, in 2024, the Surgeon General came out with a report called Parents Under Pressure. And one of the statistics that sticks with me is 41% of parents said they're under so much stress they can't function. Now, this is just average parents. This isn't single parents, divorced parents. This is just
This is
average
just
parents.
parents trying to parent in the
Parents,
world we live in
right?
today. It's hard to
It's
parent.
hard. Okay, now you add divorce or a high conflict co-parenting relationship or divorce or any
Right.
of that.
Divorce, the number 2 most stressful thing that can happen to
It,
you
well,
on the chart of stressful things.
and then you start looking at what stress does to a person, right? I'm not able to be as present as I should be for my kids because I'm
No.
stressed. I may be using unhealthy coping mechanisms, which also make me not as present, right? Where is my tolerance level? And I'll tell you, looking back, and it breaks my heart to this day. But I think every morning that I took those kids to school, it was home. We're gonna be late because my stress was at here all the time. And
Right.
anything little could skyrocket where I was at. So imagine those sweet little boys every day going to school with their mom. You didn't get in the car if you would have gotten up early. I mean, just on and on and on. And I didn't have the ability to problem solve because I am so activated all the time. I didn't have the ability to think about, well, maybe we could put a structure in the night before to get them ready. They could shower the night before. All the things
All the
that
problem solving that we do every day, but
you're
your
not
brain wasn't going there.
I wasn't as capable of doing it. I also have a memory of Jack's 8th grade graduation, which was right in the midst kind of all of the really bad conflict. And it was one of the first times that we were going to be getting together as a family, where I was going to be sitting with Blake and my parents were going to be there. And, we're going to be on stage for everybody that knows we, got divorced and things are bad and all that. And I missed a turn, which put me back in the line of traffic that I just spent 45 minutes going through for graduation. I lost my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of swear words and screaming that came out of my mouth. Okay. Shouldn't that moment, that time in the car, been spent talking to Jack about what a great moment this is? What a milestone. You're gonna be going to high school, dude. I couldn't do that because I was just so dysregulated in so many ways that any little thing created an explosion for me.
Yeah.
How does that
Well,
impact kids?
people don't realize that conflict is a cycle that is perpetuating and grows.
Okay.
Conflict does not go down the drain.
Right.
Conflict goes up out of the drain and goes sky
Right.
high, and it becomes the fight or flight response,
Mhm.
and your brain truly doesn't work the same way, right? So your brain felt threatened when you missed the turn and
Yeah.
you got into the line again, but that's the space that your children were existing in. I mean, everyone put yourself in the back seat of that car
Yeah.
as mom's having a meltdown,
Yeah.
and trust me, the other thing that children know is they knew it was gonna be a stressful event as well, right? They knew mom and dad were gonna be in the same place, and grandma and grandpa and, all the different family members. So their stress level was already higher. I have to tell you one thing that is gonna stay with me now, I think, forever, is when you said you and Blake arguing about what to do about Jack and the issues that he was having were things that may have made him wonder what role he played and his problems played in the conflict between his parents. We'll never know the answer to that, but just the heartbreak of that thought.
Absolutely. Well, we ended up having to send him to residential treatment, so he went away. He always said, "You got rid of me because I was too hard."
Oh,
Well, again, uh, there was so much for all of us. There was so much chaos, so much conflict. Yes, he was very challenging at times. But again, we look at that stress level. We look at how much it's amped up by the conflict. You look at how much of the engagement between me and Blake was around our conflict versus what could have been different if we had been locked into and synced into expending all of that energy on where can we support Jack differently. Maybe he wouldn't have had to go away. But there was so much going on that we couldn't manage it because we couldn't manage our own conflict, much
right,
less additional conflict that he brought to the situation. I'm not proud of that, but it is, I think, a reality that a lot of parents experience. And again, maybe if Blake and I had been in a better place, we still would have made that decision for a number of other reasons. But these are the things that stick with me. All I can do is think about, gosh, if we had done it different, could there have been a different outcome? And I don't want to leave people with this feeling of if you have a high conflict, co-parenting relationship, you're going to lose a child. That is not at all. And I want to make very clear Jack had challenges. However, what I want to make clear for people is that when your children have challenges, they need you even more, right? And all this wasted energy, because if you asked me today, I mean, I can come up with some stories, which we may get into, but
yeah.
I don't remember a lot of the details of the conflict. I don't, because it didn't
No,
matter, 5 years, 10 years later, it wasn't important enough. What was important is my little boy having total focus from his parents on what he needed. And not just him, my other kids have been affected greatly by what their childhood was. I mean, when you're looking at, 6, 7 years of conflict, their childhood was just enmeshed in conflict. That's a
it's what
really
they saw. It's what they
traumatic.
lived in. And everyone think about for a moment what it feels like when you are in a space where other people are in conflict, right? Where you're, sitting in a restaurant and the couple in the booth behind you is arguing loudly. Think about that discomfort you feel being around two strangers
Mhm.
who are having an argument. And then imagine being a child that lives in that space all the time,
Horrible.
all the time, right? It's the tornado, right? That they can't escape from.
Well, I think that that is a perfect example to bring forward. And I think where my youngest escaped was video games, going in his room, isolating. He does that today.
Yeah.
So these are the things that I want people to realize is these things that these coping mechanisms that the kids adopt to get through this doesn't necessarily leave them. And so I, in the last year, had to come to terms with the fact that the conflict between their dad and I shaped their lives. And here is the messed up thing about it. And yet I can say that Blake and I respect each other today, that we're good friends, and yet my kids are left with the junk. That's a pretty crummy thing. And so I think as parents, it's really recognizing first and foremost, I think when I got divorced, it was like, I'm done. I don't have to deal with him anymore. Well,
And then every day, there he is.
you do. And I think the other thing was this magical thinking that he's suddenly going to operate differently, right? He's going to be a different parent. He's going to be a different partner in parenting, right? He wasn't. And the problem was is I was so focused on the way I thought things should be done, how you create consistency for kids, how you show kids love, all of those things. And he was doing it wrong
Because he wasn't doing it your way.
because he wasn't doing it my way.
Yep.
And so, you can imagine the conflict that created. Rather than sitting back and going, you know what? There are things that he is going to be able to give these kids that I can't. Their dad is very successful in business. He's built businesses. He was able to teach them about finances and how to show up as a professional in this world,
Yeah.
to be respectful, right? Not to mention his love of sports. I mean, that man coached just about every one of their games. He was, and he'll probably listen to this, and I can say, and he'll agree, he was a crazy man on the field, or the court, wherever he was. Most parents were going, "Who is that? Who's
Who's
that
the
coach?
maniac
Who's
screening
that?" Yeah,
over there?
yeah. But he showed up for his kids that way. I wish I would have figured out a way to honor the good then, because I think it would have made a big difference.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
and for all of you, right? In that moment, seeing you're not supporting your kids in the same way, but you were both supporting your kids in the best way each of you has. Because I know there are a lot of great things your kids got from you as well.
well, yeah, and it may have changed how we did things. Here
Yeah.
we went into when I found out that he was making more money, everybody's telling me, well, you should get more child support. Okay. We may have been able to have a conversation around that, around what we each offer the kids, and may have been able to have been able to come to a different agreement around that. Which brings me to a point that I think is critical here. And that is that when people are going through, particularly these more high conflict situations, you have to look at the divorce ecosystem that we live in. And it is one that fans the flames of conflict.
It sure does.
And that's not just the professionals that you work with, that's the
Mhm.
family, your friends, all the media you see about divorce. You are inundated all the time. When you Google something, it's like Googling WebMD, right? You're going to get the worst possible, story around your situation. And I'll give you an example. When I decided that I should be getting more
More
child support,
money. Yep.
right? I approached Blake and he made an offer to me that I didn't think was fair. You've covered fair, so we don't need to cover that
We don't
word.
need to talk about what fair
Yeah.
is, but
I went to an attorney, one of the best attorneys in San Diego at the time. She never asked me a question about, well, what's most important to you? Because you know what was most important to me at that time? I had 80% custody.
winning. Oh, okay.
If she had asked me, okay, well, what's most important to you? Because I see you have 80% custody. Because if you open this up, more than likely he's going to want more custody. Nobody told me that. And I will tell you today, as angry as I was with him at the time and what I thought was fair, I would have never have risked my 80%
80%
custody.
of custody.
And not only that, she never looked at my MSA, which said we needed to mediate, which and have said to me, well, he did make an offer. So, he might be willing to look at
The
things
negotiate.
differently. And so maybe we should try mediation. That's one example in a 2-year battle where I didn't have professionals looking out or looking to try to de-escalate things or problem solve. But what happened? They fanned the flames of conflict. And it just continued from there, which is another critical component to all of this. You cannot turn your life and your children's well-being over to strangers. When you work with professionals, you need to be very clear with them what is important to you, what you're trying to protect, what your goals are. And every time they suggest a strategy or something, you need to be asking, how does that support this?
Right.
Where are the risks to these things that I'm trying to protect? So that you can evaluate those risks. You cannot turn over your life to these people because I can tell you that attorney right now isn't living with any regret
No,
about the
not
conflict
her
that
job.
would.
Well, what
So
she heard was a client come through the door who said, "My ex is making more money and I want more child support." And so she put on her battle
yeah,
armor, filed a motion to get more child support, and then all of these things, right?
oh,
Absolutely.
domino theory. Yeah,
Yeah, the domino theory. But for you all living in the maelstrom,
mhm,
that's when the conflict starts to ramp up, right? And so the motion gets filed, that's conflictual. Then they file the next thing, which is the motion to modify custody. You freak out not knowing that, so right, and then you go through a 2-year battle
yeah,
and however many more years of your children's childhood in conflict.
absolutely. I mean, we had I think 3 hearings, in front of a judge. I mean, you know how stressful that was?
Oh yeah.
And it all could have possibly been avoided
Mhm.
if the one professional had said, "Wait a second." Or if I had had a guide myself, like a coach or a therapist or
Sure.
somebody said to me, "Listen, this whole family court system is not what you think it is," right? It does not, look out for what's fair and what's right. It is a system, and most people get turned up in this system. And so, first thing you need to do is get very clear on what is important to you, what you want to protect, and what your goal is. And then you need to bring that to whatever professional you work with, and you need to hold on to that and make sure that they are working to that end and not any other.
Yeah. And always know, I mean, it's a little bit of an aside, but this is something I have said to clients for years. Always know that if you file a motion, that always opens the door to them thinking, well, what don't I like?
Right?
What can I file a motion about? And in the particular paradigm, especially in California where you are, where child support amount is tied to custody time,
Mhm.
the amount of time, parenting time each parent has, that's a given that they're going to do that, especially when you
Yeah.
had a disparate 80-20,
Yeah.
right? So, but know that when you make the choice, because it's a choice to file a motion,
Mhm.
you know that what you are doing is now opening up the door for whatever grievance or issue or problems they think are there. And now suddenly what seemed like a simple matter to you of it's just a child support calculation. He's earning X dollars more. The child support guidelines say this turned into the rest of your lives
It did.
in some ways, right? The rest of
It
your lives in some ways.
Yeah, I will never not regret those years.
Yep.
I lost those years. I lost those years for really being able to engage with my kids and and just a fun way, right?
Yeah.
It was such a slog those years. I was angry so often. I look back and it makes me really sad that I don't remember good times. I mean, the tens of thousands of dollars I spent on legal fees, and I think about all the vacations I could have taken with my kids, all the moments, all the special things I could have done with them that would stay with us forever. And where did it go? Out the door.
Yeah.
It
To the
funded somebody
lawyers.
else's vacations.
Yeah. And their children's school and
Yes.
childhoods and all of those things.
Yeah.
So I want to dive in on something that you said earlier because you used a very particular word.
Mhm.
And I would imagine that the people who are listening today who might be in conflict with a co-parent, you said that you and Blake, your children's dad, have gotten to a place where you respect each other.
Mhm.
Respect.
Yeah.
And I think put yourself go back to Kelly in the midst of that time of turmoil, the idea that the two of you could respect each other as
Yeah.
parents and as people, it had to be a pipe dream. It had to seem impossible, as it does to the people who are listening here today.
Well, if I'm going to put myself back and at that time, I probably would have turned this off at this point
Yeah.
because I would
Yeah,
have
they're
said,
like, "These people are
there's no
crazy."
way. There's no way.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to know that I mean, I'm not a rose colored glasses person. I'm not like, I mean, we had tough years and I didn't like Blake for many years. Again, I think it is realizing that whether you like it or not, this person's going to be in your life forever, first of all. And that's just it. And whether you choose to have a relationship with them or not, your children will,
Right.
right? And should. And again, there's
The
always
outliers.
there's the outliers. And I completely understand that. And so if you can find what it is that's good about that your co-parent, like I had indicated some things that I think like was really good at and have been gifts that my kids now, use and benefit them. That's really helpful. And if you can't see it, find out what your kids see that's good and at least honor that, right? Because I think that when you can uncover some things that are good, that's where I think the respect starts. And again, I am very fortunate that Blake has been very kind and thoughtful. And I mean, he sends me Mother's Day cards. He sends me gifts. I mean, it's
Okay,
just
I hope everyone's hearing this because
yeah.
they're thinking that, well, yes, but that's not my ex. Yes, yes, folks,
Well,
it is.
and I will tell you, and I want to be careful because I care deeply for Blake. But I can tell you that every word that all of you listeners are calling your ex or your co-parent are all the same words I use. And there was no question in my mind that he was all of these things.
Mhm.
No question in my mind. In fact, Susan, you may be able to reflect back. I think when we first met, I think I shared
Yes.
some of where Blake and I were at and what I thought about him. So this isn't just, I mean, this is all real. This is
Yeah, no, I can
it,
I can
yeah,
verify, folks.
yeah. And, and,
Yes.
and, and so again, not every, I, not every co-parenting relationship out there will get to where fortunately Blake and I got to. I think more can than think they can. Because truly, if Blake and I are able to do it, I think anybody can. But let's get back to what we started talking about. Even
Yep.
if you can't get to that relationship with your co parent, think about your relationship with yourself. And you owe yourself that peace and to find a way to center and to operate in a place that 10 years from now, you'll be proud of how you handle things. If your children were to run across, emails you sent or texts you sent or whatever it is,
The court filings, folks, those are
exactly,
public record.
exactly, that you can rest assured that you feel proud of the way you handle things. Because I'm telling you, it will come back, and it's not just Jack's passing that obviously is made this much shine a much brighter light on it for me. But I will tell you, even before Jack passed, I could see the damage in my
Mhm.
kids,
Sure.
and it imprinted on them. And it will probably be imprinted on them lifelong. And the choices all of you have to make today is going to change that imprint. How it changes is up to you.
That's such an important, it's never too late
Never too late.
to drop the rope,
Yeah.
right? So let's share a couple of ways or share a couple of things that are how you drop the rope. Like, what did that look like? Was it getting that nasty text and just not responding?
Sometimes you'll hear a lot of times, particularly coaches, which is what I do, say you don't have to respond to everything. I will tell you that my co-parent, if I didn't respond, sometimes that would amp things up.
Right.
Right. So it was learning how to respond. Um, Sometimes it was just, okay, I got it. Or, and in the beginning it may have been, well, that wasn't how I saw it, or that wasn't how I experienced it, kind of like that. Where that morphed into was really validating how he was feeling. Cause most of the time when he would send me, a text or an email and, raging about
Wow, wow,
something,
wow, wow, wow. Yeah.
it was because he was frustrated about something the boys did. And I am telling you, the moment I started to go, can you imagine that was really frustrating. I know when they've done that here, it's been frustrating for me. If if you'd like, I can share with you how we've handled that. And when I started doing that, I I mean, it was almost immediate. The back and forth would stop. If we were on a call, he wouldn't continue to be like, it was like he felt heard and he was able to move on. Again, that may not work with everybody, but that's what worked for us. Um, so I think it was, first of all, being really clear on what needed to be responded to and what didn't. And there were certainly things I didn't respond to, particularly in the beginning. Learning how to respond in a way that wasn't going to amp up the conflict. I used Biff.
Oh God. Thank you, Bill Eddy.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I used that quite a bit when I needed to craft a response. And then I got to a place where I really could validate where he was at, and be able to at least validate that I understand that's hard. And then we got to a place where I could share. I've experienced that too. And if you'd like, I can share with you, what we did or what I did that seemed to help. I wish that I could tell you I have some magic framework for how
Right.
to do it. Sometimes what I'll say is, how would you engage with a client that you've had to have? It's some of those skills. We typically all have them. How many times have we had a boss or a manager or a client or a teacher or a coach or a professor? I mean, you can go down the list of people that we have to deal with in life.
Right.
And more importantly, we kind of have to have them on our side, right? It's those skills. How would I respond to a client? How would I have responded to a teacher if this came at me? Again, it's not a magic bullet, but I think it's rethinking that this is a business partnership essentially that you have with this person, and it's the business of raising your children.
Right.
It's a partnership you can't demolish. So knowing that this is a partnership that has to stay intact in order for your children to be successful, how would you treat a business partner or somebody you were in business with that you had to keep it going because your survival depended on that business being successful? My guess is people would pull on those skills much more rapidly if it was that circumstance. And what I'm trying to say is this isn't any different.
No. The only difference, right, I think, is that we wish they would just go away in a certain way, right? We wish they would just, or that they would change,
Yep.
right? We have that magical thinking that if I just tell them one more time what they're
Yep.
doing wrong, and
Yeah.
imagine the shift internally when instead of telling them why they shouldn't be frustrated about something the boys did, you say, "Oh, wow, I can hear that that was frustrating. We've had that happen too and felt the same way." Not only does that shift things for the co parent, but you just took yourself out of conflict by
Yes.
recognizing that you actually have more in common than you don't have in common in that moment.
I, I, I mean, bingo. It's a change. And what I found is when I did that, over a period of time, things started to change for me. Things started to change. He wasn't expecting a fight every time we engaged, right? I had given him some grace by recognizing what was difficult for him. And then he was able to do that with me. It kind of builds on itself, right? And you had said earlier, the kids, I don't think our kids reacted. I don't think they really noticed right away. And I think it took years, really. I think it was so ingrained in them that they had anxiety every time we were going to be together, that really only now it's starting to shift for them. In fact, I said to my youngest son, said, maybe you and dad and Sam can come to Thanksgiving at our house. And he was like, "Oh, that would be weird. That would be weird." And things have been good for several years, 5, 6,
Right.
7
But they're
years.
still
But
like,
it's
let's not
still
test it.
it's still awkward for them. We had Christmas together last year. You could tell it was just a little awkward for them. So, I think it was a really important point that you brought up that kids, this has been imprinted, whatever this your conflict is, and it isn't gonna change for them overnight. It may take them a very long time to feel secure that this has changed.
Yeah. That it's can be okay for mom and
Yeah,
dad to be in the same place, in the same room. And we
right?
don't, the thing for children is when they know that mom and dad are going to be in the same place, or mom and dad, but when they're going to be together and they know there's all this conflict, the anxiety starts for them long before the event that brings their parents into the same space. And
Uh,
they usually will have some coping mechanism that they fall into of either being the perfect child when mom and dad are in, or trying to be the peacemaker, or they get stuck in that horrifying position of do I go see mom first or go see dad first after the school play? It's a constant anxiety for them.
well, it is, and so, the way I think that played out in our family was Jack turned to drugs, 8th grade. Sam became the perfect child, always was there to take care of everybody.
Perfectionism is a coping mechanism, everyone.
Yeah, was the sports guy, all of that,
Yep.
and feel isolated,
Yes. Becomes the invisible child.
right? And, again, looking back on that, it's incredibly sad because Blake and I had the ability to change that. We had the ability to not make that happen, and one of the things I think I always sit with is I wonder what those sweet boys would be like today, how different they would be if they hadn't had to live through that war. So that's really what it is for them. It makes me incredibly sad to think how different. I mean, they are lovely, lovely boys. You will not, I'll say you won't find a mom that loves her boys more than I do, but I'm sure all the listeners love their kids greatly, but I adore my boys. But I see their struggles,
Sure.
and I think their dad and I contributed mightily to them.
But it's never too late for things to change.
Yep.
It's never, beyond, one of the things I think is beautiful about all of this is that in the space of Jack passing, you're able to see Jack for the beauty that he brought to your lives,
Mhm.
right? And enjoy that and honor that and celebrate that. You so beautifully spoke about him and what you remember about him. And none of that was about the problems that he had or the difficulties that he brought in. And for your other two boys who are still here with you, the fact yes, it maybe is still awkward when mom and dad get together, but you know what? When that first grandchild shows up and you and their dad show up in the hospital room to meet that grandbaby, that's gonna be that grandbaby isn't gonna grow up with dueling grandparents,
Absolutely. They're gonna see their grandparents hug,
right?
you know? They're yeah, they're gonna see is love. Love. And again, I love that Blake gave me those 3 boys. I love who those boys are, and they're half of him.
We say it all the time, but
Yeah.
it's a little different when you're able to internalize it and see it. And I the beauty, listeners, that you are getting here is the view from the future, right? Kelly is giving you sort of two alternate paths here where you can continue down that path of conflict or you can try something different. That's a gift.
I don't want people to regret like I regret, and certainly, again, I thankfully, most people don't lose their child. but you can lose that special wedding moment, right? Because all your kid remembers is that, I had to figure out where I was going to sit, mom and dad, because, or dad was bringing his girlfriend, or mom was bringing, her boyfriend. And, it was just, I would have rather just eloped. Those stories will come up at some point, and
They
you're going to
will.
sit there. Yeah, they will. And are you going to sit there and be proud of the fact that that's what your kids remember about that special moment? They're gonna remember that when they had their first child, that they had to worry about who they called first because the other parent is gonna be angry. Is that what you want them to remember? Do you want them to just sit and soak in that moment of joy?
With
That's the
you.
choice. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the choice everybody has to make, because if you don't make it, I mean, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I pretty much guarantee at some point in your life, you're gonna have regrets, and there's nothing you're gonna be able to do about it.
That is the gift of this episode. That is the gift of your sharing, Kelly, so generously of your experience, in all different ways. It's very hard to sit down and say to a microphone with thousands or millions of people on the other end of it that you didn't do everything perfectly, that you regret some of the way, things fell out, but you're sharing out of the generous hope that they can have something different and their children can have something different. And your children have something different now. And you have something different. I think that's really important for everyone to understand because I met you in the midst of that stress
Yeah.
and you're in a different place. You are a different person in the world you exist in today, despite the loss, despite the sadness, despite everything.
My hope is that even if one person hears this and makes a change, it makes a difference. I have years and years ahead of me to make repair with Sam and Paul.
Yeah.
I don't have that with Jack, but I do believe that my little boy is up there looking down, and he's proud of me for shining a light on these issues, and I can hear him, and I just hope that your listeners really take this to heart and realize that they can change things, and their co-parent may never change, but they can change it for themselves, and they can focus the energy where they're going to actually get some benefit.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but I hear Jack's laugh,
Hmm.
and I hope you feel his hug right now because I know he's very proud of you for sharing. And I'm, again, very honored that you would share this with the Divorce and Beyond family and listeners. And again, on my behalf, thank you. And on their behalf, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me tell my story. I really appreciate it.
The bravery, honestly, I'm honored. Thank you. Before we close, I want to leave you with 4 things from today's conversation that I think are worth carrying with you. Number 1, dropping the rope starts with you and only you. Not with your co-parent changing, not with one conversation that finally lands. Kelly dropped the rope because she was exhausted, and she stayed committed to not picking it back up even when Blake had not changed yet. That is the part people miss. You do not wait for them to meet you. You decide who you are going to be in the next interaction, and you hold that decision. The peace comes first for you. The change in the dynamic follows slowly when it follows at all. Nugget number 2. The people around your divorce are not all helping you. You need to look at your ecosystem honestly. The attorney who hands you battle armor before asking what you want to protect, the family members who relitigate every grievance, the friend who validates every worst instinct. Kelly went through 2 years of litigation that might never have happened if one professional had asked, "What matters most to you, and what are you willing to risk?" Before you take any legal action, know exactly what you are protecting and exactly what you are putting on the table, and then decide with your eyes open. Number 3, your children are watching every single moment of this. Kelly missed Jack's 8th grade graduation in her head long before she ever arrived at the function. The screaming in the car over a missed turn, the morning chaos before school, those were the moments her boys were living in. And I want you to think about the moment you are in right now. The car, the pickup line, the text you are about to send. These are the moments your children are going to carry, that it will be imprinted on them. You get to decide what they will carry from here on out. And 4, it is never too late, not for any of you. Kelly is in repair with her 2 sons right now. It's not instant. It does not erase what came before, but it is real and it is happening. And it started with the decision she made about who she wanted to be going forward. Whatever has already been said or filed or fought over in your situation, the next chapter is still unwritten. Start it now. I want to say one more time to Kelly, thank you. Not just for coming back to the Divorce and Beyond for the 3rd time, but for bringing something this personal here and for trusting that this community would receive it the way it deserves to be received. Jack sounds like he was a remarkable person, and I think he would be proud of his mom today. If today's conversation stayed with you, please share it. You know someone who is in the middle of this right now. You don't have to say anything, just send them the episode. There's also a free resource called Drop the Rope, a practical guide to de-escalating co-parenting conflict. You can find it on the website at divorceandbeyondpod.com. And you can find Kelly directly at firststepsdivorce.com. Until next time, listeners, I'm Susan Guthrie. This is Divorce and Beyond. Take good care. If today's episode helped you see something more clearly, take a moment to reflect on one insight you can carry forward, one decision you can approach differently, one next step that feels more grounded. Divorce is not a failure. It is about facing reality and choosing a healthier path forward for yourself and your family. You can find show notes, trusted divorce resources, and expert guidance at divorceandbeyondpod.com. If this episode was helpful, follow the podcast and share it with someone who may need support right now. I'm Susan Guthrie. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next time with more clarity, insight, and support on Divorce and Beyond.